Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind. I am here joined by a new guest as well as an old guest, as someone who's always frequented the show. Coach Roache, of course. Shout out to you. I'm going to ask you in a second how you're doing. But today I'm here to say we're joined by Raptors Republic, Alex. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, and so I'll let you pronounce your own last name if you want to. Yeah, you did a lot of covering of the FIBA tournament. As well as you recently, I don't know if he was always on your list, but you caught and this is no, people don't take this the wrong way, but you caught a whale, Mr. Brian Windhorst.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think it was really, really great to listen to your stuff throughout the tournament, but as well as the most recent stuff. So I think first and foremost, what did you think of, I mean, your summer has probably been a bit of a blur, but how have you guys been doing? And specifically for you, how have you been doing recently?
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no, it has been a blur. I think that's a pretty adept way to describe it. Just covering the Canadian men's national team and being in Jakarta and doing interviews and scrums. And I was around Arash Madani of Sportsnet, which was really fun. And he kind of guided me along the way. And I was at training camp, and that was pretty starstruck of me to walk into the gym, and there's Jamal Murray, there's RJ Barrett, there's Shea, Nikhil, Kelly, and I felt like a kid in a candy store. Just all the players that I looked up to as a fan were right in front of me, and then asking questions. And my first question to Kelly Olynyk at training camp did not go well, and he said, "Ask coach," and everyone laughed. So that was my intro to covering the team. And thankfully, it went up, I think, a little bit after that. But yeah, and until Brian Windhorst, really, really nice guy. Has a really interesting journey covering LeBron since he was like 14, 15. I'm talking about when LeBron was 14, not Brian. But and then just kind of going to ESPN, and now he's obviously an insider, and gave a bit of tidbits that got aggregated, which was funny because we talked about aggregation. And then within an hour of me posting it, I see Barstool and NBA Central just taking everything out of context and saying Giannis 50-50 leaving or something like that, or Dame. I don't know, I don't even remember now. But anyway, so it's been a really cool summer. And yeah, it's pretty cool to cover a little bit of to cover the men's national team, and they did obviously amazingly. And to see Dylan Brooks put a 40 piece on the USA was a nice way to cap it off. And then to have Brian Windhorst was pretty cool too. I had that in the works for a while, and it just happened to be that it came out right when I came back, and then got him. But yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. So I think, you know what, since we just talked about a lot of the FIBA stuff, we might as well, instead of going with what I was originally going to go with, let's just continue on with the FIBA stuff. So I guess my first question to you is, what was your favorite game to? I'm assuming you did the painstaking work of watching all games live, but if you don't, that's okay. You don't have to say it. But what was it like watching all, or covering all of the games, and what was your favorite one?
Yeah, I mean, I was unfortunately wasn't there to go to Manila, just because FIBA is great, because I found out I got my accreditation to Manila after Canada beat Spain, so that was fun. So I really got to plan out my trip. But I would say probably my favorite game was the Spain game, just because it was so cool to, like, I was right in front, looking directly at SGA when he made that shot over. I think the name's the guy on Spain's Victor Claver.
Yep.
Just the way in which they came back, and seeing Dylan Brooks make shot after shot. And I was so, if you go back and look at my Twitter in going into that fourth quarter, you would have thought that the sky was falling, because I thought it was over. I had no belief. I was probably, part of me was in tears. And then it was honestly a shock, they just kind of plugged away. They just got closer and closer and closer. And I remember the and one, the Brooks three, and thinking, "Oh my God, it's happening!" Like it felt. I didn't even get excited. It just was like, "Oh my God, I did not expect this to happen," and really cool. And then I saw RJ dancing, and asked Shea a couple questions at the presser, and just really cool. And it was a crazy night for me. I had a lot of media requests, so that was fun too. Didn't go to bed until like 3 in the morning, and then everything. So really cool. And then obviously the Canada beating the USA was just amazing. I think that it probably was better for the program in a lot of ways that they beat the USA than even maybe getting a gold medal. If they weren't like, let's say they won the gold medal without beating the USA, I think it's maybe not as important for just getting casual viewers to care about it. To say, okay, Canada beat USA in men's basketball. Like, how crazy is that, right? And so, so many people. Well, I mean, not as many people watched it because it was in 5 in the morning, but people knew about it. And what a game. Mikal Bridges made me scared to death. But then after that crazy shot, and then SGA just is the calmest person I've ever been around. Doesn't get high, doesn't get low. And I think that's why he's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I definitely agree with you. Everyone was looking forward to the quote unquote the game of the summer, and we didn't think that it was going to happen at some points during this tournament, and then it happened. And I think regardless of it being, I don't know, obviously from the local side of things, I don't think that one was greater than the other in terms of coverage, but I think from a worldwide, like, people kind of tuning in or checking out the Canada versus the U.S. game, to me it seems like a lot more people cared about that matchup and that happening. And so from a Canadian program, it seems like they've spent a lot of money investing in
Yes.
the program, getting it to this point, whether it be grassroots things that I think Michael Grange has covered with Samson. That was a really good podcast that was on Raptors Republic, and I definitely suggest people listen to that because people don't often think about like where these journeys start, and like a lot of times it's like parents, investing in their kids and going from there. But also to kind of go through. I think also Rowan seeing his son to kind of live his dream out, live vicariously through his son is a really beautiful moment as well. And just like to me, my goal personally coming into this for that I set for Team Canada for whatever that is worth is I said they should medal. Well, regardless of what that is, they should medal, and I said they need to make the Olympics. Those are like bare minimum requirements. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
coming into this, what did you think? And Coach, do you want to share any thoughts? What was your favorite game?
Kind of what Alex said. It was the Spain game for multiple reasons. That was the game which we were able to qualify for the Olympics. 5 Olympics have passed since we've been in the Summer Olympics or the Canadian men's program. The women's program has done very well in this country for quite a few years. And now it is, it's good to see the men's program kind of stepping up on the world stage as well. I think we went from the power rankings. I think before the tournament we were 15th and now we're sixth. Mike, is that correct, Alex? Something like
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of in that specific game against Spain. I tweeted like SGA just had like his Jordan step back moment, like when Jordan won it against Utah in the finals. That was like something that we needed in Canada. Like clearly the situations are a little bit different, but that step back on Victor, I think it was Claver, like you
Yeah.
said, who I believe is 37, 38 years old. Like if you're SGA, you want that matchup. You want if you could take him off the dribble or um, just where he's got youth and more athleticism on his side. Um, but Dylan Brooks in that game certainly he it was his contributions were massive because up to that point, I wouldn't exactly say he was having a very good Olympics World Cup up to that point. I think it's somewhat debatable. Like he was at times he could be good, at times he was in foul trouble on the bench. But that was like the coming out game for him and really solidifying his place in Canada basketball. And without that performance, they probably don't win the game. So that win against Spain to get to the quarterfinals, that's probably the men's biggest win since 2000 when they were in the Olympics.
Yeah, no, just to piggyback off that, I mean, I think going into the tournament, yeah, to go off Kenyon's point, like I, I felt the medal was something that was possible, but because of their draw, it was going to be really tough to just make the Olympics. And maybe in the long run, people will remember that USA game more than the Spain game, but you need that Spain game before you can get to the USA game. And I know so many diehards, fans and alumni were just like, here we go again. And, every time we're the better team and we find a way to lose to more inexperienced team like the Spanish, who played really, really well in that game. Shout out to Santi Aldama, who was just a force in that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shea and Dylan were amazing down the stretch. And I will say, like, a little nugget from being around there, around the team, was that Dylan Brooks was the best 3-point shooter in practice. Like, he was consistently going 7, 8 of 10, like wide open. They weren't, and kind of just corner at the top of the, so he was really, really a good shooter. And you know what? He shot 58% from three in the tournament. I don't know if that's going to be something that happens with the Rockets. I'm going to bet a lot of money that he's not going to shoot over 50% from three. And if he plays a lot of games this year for the Rockets, barring injury. But I think the shooting's real. I thought his shot selection was amazing. And without those two, Canada is nowhere near making the Olympics or even going to or beating the USA. And it's just going to be really, really fun next year to have both of them with a bit more experience. They know the FIBA game a little bit. They'll have some more continuity that they didn't have going into this tournament, and they kind of grew into. And we're pretty lucky to have Shea Gilgeous-Alexander as a Canadian. I will say that, because I thought I voted for him as tournament MVP, and shout out to Dennis Schroeder, great tournament, but I don't think he was the best player in the tournament.
Wait! I have to interrupt here. So now you're telling me you're big time enough to have the media vote?
Well, yeah, I had media credentials, so they gave me a media vote. I didn't. This wasn't me bargaining and saying I need to be like one of the NBA. I think the NBA has 100 votes for all NBA and MVP, and so yeah, I was fortunate enough to have one for FIBA too. So I was lucky. I don't know why, but I felt I actually got all five team, like the all NBA version of the FIBA team. I had all of them on my team. I just got they had Schroeder instead of SGA. So, but I feel confident about my vote, so I don't feel like I didn't feel biased. I just thought he was better. I don't know how you win MVP if you shoot 4 of 26 in a game. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like that just.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll definitely say this. I just and then I know, Coach, you were going to say something, but sometimes the votes are really interesting from an NBA standpoint. If you actually break down, there's one person, I can't remember who it is. I'm not going to name their name. I think it's a Spanish writer though, for the NBA, and like I think, what was it, like 2 years ago he voted for like Derrick Rose as MVP, and I was like, what in the world?
Yes,
It was
I think.
so you get sometimes these very interesting people with that get votes. But anyways, it's just an interesting point. Coach, you were going to say something.
No, not to sound like a homer, but I agree with Alex. Shea was the best player in the tournament, and I was very pleased that Schroeder had won it, not only because he's now a Raptor fan, but just seeing him lead Germany, not exactly littered with NBA players, let's just put it that way. Like, they have a couple of NBA players, but a lot of
Hey
guys I
man,
think
don't
probably
don't diss
play.
France. Don't diss
Yeah,
France.
but mainly, you can make the argument that Jay may have had more help around him than Dennis Schroeder did, just comparing like the two potential MVPs. I think it's an argument you could make, but I give a shout out to Gordy Herbert too, the German coach. Like, he can coach. He had a terrific tournament.
That Canadian coach, he actually coached Canada, not in this cycle of qualifiers, but back in 2019 when Canada made the FIBA World Cup. So he coached Canada. Shout out to Roy Rana. I talked to him a little bit, but was the coach of Egypt. So now we actually see, on a little bit of a diatribe here, but some kind of Canadian coaching connections in the FIBA world, as you would know, Coach. So pretty cool, and that's something that hopefully, alongside Canada doing well in these tournaments, is that we see more and more Canadian coaches, and that's really what we're seeing. We see a lot of talent in this country, which is another kind of cool thing to see.
So we'll kind of transition slowly into the NBA portion, but before we do that, I think a perfect way to segue is to look down the Canadian roster. First of all, I just want to point out that we do have I think last time I checked, about 26 or 27
Yeah.
Canadians that we could potentially put on a roster. And I believe there was a Canadian today. Was it Sharp that said recently? It was either today or
Yeah,
yesterday.
Sharp said
He
if he
did.
got him, he'd want to go.
Yes.
That we can go on that tangent if you want.
we,
I have my own
we
feeling.
will get there. Not to worry, we will get there. But I want to just focus on the people in this tournament right now. Give them some shine because I've been told that we haven't given them enough shine. So I want to first start off with someone that I was actually a little bit disappointed in their tournament. Still contributed. I always see them as there's someone who have actually wanted to be a Raptor for a long time, which is actually Shea's cousin. So
Mhm.
he I found as opposed to Victoria, seemed to be sped up a little bit in this tournament, later on in the tournament, especially. I don't know what your read is on that. Obviously, I think he did a phenomenal job overall, but again, I think this is part of the reason why I would like to go with more depth in the future. We'll get to that in a second. I would still have him on my team, but I think when you have to play him sometimes 17, 20 minutes, it might be a little bit high at that in some of those games given the format of the tournament. But yeah, I just wondered thoughts because he didn't have the same type of run that he did in Victoria.
Yeah, I don't. I think. I mean, the Brazil game was not good. Airball threes hit the backboard. If you take that game out and he still shot close to 40% from three, I think they just asked a lot of him. And what you saw with Jordi Fernandez was later in the tournament, he didn't just have Nikhil and Lou and all non NBA players like an Alexander and Edie, Scrub, Edgem, right? Like they kind of closed down that lineup and the rotation to about 8, 9 guys. And I thought he did well. I think he's a good playmaker, but he's not a point guard, right? And so he got a bit exposed. And but I thought he had a really good tournament. Other than the Brazil game, for the most part, he shot well. He play makes a little bit. He brought defense. I still think about that game against Spain where he's just hounding. I think the 19-year-old point guard's named Nunes for Spain and was really hounding him up and down the court in that fourth quarter. He was on the court to end those games. And I thought he played really well. Now, could he be better? Sure. But I think if you put him in an environment when he's with good players, he's great. I just don't think you want him to be essentially your backup point guard, which he played. And I think that's just that role is a bit too much for him. But he's a really good secondary creator, good shooter. Obviously has the connections with Shea, and they were being around them in Jakarta. They were together all the time. Like they would shoot warm-ups every time Shea was out there. Nikhil would be out there. That was kind of how they rolled, and pretty cool to see them both make the Olympics. And I think he'll be a big part of that team in Paris. I just think, barring injuries, like if Shea gets injured or whatever, I think he'll just have a bit more of a reduced role in terms of just playmaking, and I think that'll probably help out the rest of his game.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking too. Is just I can't remember the the other roster that we had, but in terms
In
of
21,
yeah, I can't
yeah.
remember
So
like
there was
those
RJ
lineups.
Barrett. There was RJ Barrett, Lou Dort,
I know
Dwight
Trey
Powell,
Lyles played.
Brandon Clark was there.
Brandon Clark. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm wondering if like
Clark.
depending, I can't remember like what
I think he
the
was.
specific
Oh,
lineups that
Brandon
he
Clark
was.
wasn't there.
He wasn't
Um,
there.
No,
no, it
I
was
think Trey Lyles was there though.
He
Trey
was
Lyles.
there. I remember.
Yeah,
He was
Andrew
there.
Wiggins. Brandon Clark's never played for Canada. Just I know that for. But yeah, no, that team that he played on, he had an even bigger role
Yeah.
too. But they played. Shout out to Czech Republic or Czechia, or I think that's how you say it, for making the Olympics. But
Mhm.
Canada did not go through the same teams that they went through in this tournament. Um,
Yes.
they didn't have to play a Spain, a France. Yeah, Latvia was really good. And shout out to their fans and shout out to their media because I got to know them really well, which was pretty cool. So
Yeah.
obviously Slovenia, there's no Luka in that tournament. So yeah, I really like Nikhil. I thought he brought the defense, playmaking, and I think on that Minnesota Timberwolves team, I really like the fit on him. And if he can just find a role in the NBA to just like carve out one, I really think he'll be very successful.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, for the past 2 years ish, I've like basically been like, can the Raptors get this guy? Because like not even because he's Shea's cousin, although I'm like I'm not against tampering, but like I'm just like, can we get this guy because he's a combo guard and the Raptors could have used some sort of, maybe not like, as you said, he's maybe not supposed to be like a primary offensive initiator in the perfect role, but like, I mean,
It
we
would
didn't
be
really
nice
have
to have
much to deal with.
a shooting off the bench on the Raptors. That'd be nice. Other
That
than
that too.
Grady Dick, that'd be yeah.
Hey man, bubble wrap auto.
Oh my God.
But the other thing is, I did think overall, like I'm being a little bit harsh on purpose, but I did think he had a pretty good tournament overall, but especially I think he always brings it on defense, for sure. But exactly what you were saying, I would like to see him in a more reduced role if we're actually serious about going for a gold medal. Obviously, I will also want to talk about with the man, the myth, the legend from Montreal, Shea's
Okay.
boy, Lou Dort. Uh, so yeah, first of all, I always find it interesting when teammates are able to play together in different scenarios. And I don't know if you want to comment on that at all. But I think Lou
Yeah.
Dort, as coach will probably tell you, FIBA he seems built for FIBA in terms of the physicality aspect.
Yeah, it was interesting. I talked to him a little bit, and I wouldn't get the sense that he loved the physicality,
Yeah,
that it is more physical, but he also said to me, just like at the same time, it's not like that's not my game. But I think even for a guy like Lou Dort, the physicality was something he had to get, or he got used to, and wasn't even, maybe he's not so used to it. He's normally used to the one banging and all the time, and then he gets
yeah,
the feel, and everyone's doing what he does. I thought he played really well. Again, maybe take a bit less shots. That's the one thing I would like, is only shoot an open three unless it's wide open. But again, kind of to the Nikhil point, is that he was probably asked to do a bit too much offensively. And if you have a guy like Jamal Murray, if you have a guy like Andrew Wiggins on top of this roster in Paris, I don't see Lou Dort having a nearly as big an offensive role, and that's going to be good because on defense, him and Dylan Brooks were just. I don't want to say it reminds me of Pippen and Jordan, but they had that kind of perimeter defense that was just suffocating.
yeah.
And no one really in the rest of the tournament had those types of defenders to put on ball. They both could be a bit better off ball, but at the same time, you won't really you won't get too upset with their hustle and just the pressure they put on the ball.
Yeah, and before I go to anyone else in the lineup, and don't worry, I'm not going to go through every single player, but I'm going to go through a couple more. I think it's really important to have good point of attack defense. I think that's why I thought going into this tournament, Germany always scared me. Um, and not just because of Dennis, but just in general, but partially because of Dennis too. I think that point of attack defense is something that's super important because it puts way less pressure on the back line. I'm not saying that we have to rely on Zach Edey. Thankfully, no offense, but the foot speed is a little bit needs some work. But if you say, break in case of emergency, someone gets injured or whatever, you need that point of attack defense to hold it down at some level. Although I think that Jordy would probably still lean against heavy 80 minutes in that case. So my question now goes to, in terms, I'm just going to talk about the bigs together. Oh, Edie, we just kind of covered. So between Olynyk and Powell, obviously Olynyk and Powell have really, done a lot for the program in recent years, and just in general. What do you feel like? Well, obviously, I think Olynyk was really important for this team, and I can't say it enough. There were times when, like, just from an initiation standpoint, the offense stagnated, and he was kind of the adult in the room, so to speak. But yeah, I'm wondering what you think about our big rotation, and I don't know if it's something in the water, but it seems like the Europeans have a more stout big people.
Yeah, no. It was interesting because at the end of the tournament, they put a Olynyk on the bench. You saw that in the second half against Spain, against the USA. He didn't start. He just wasn't great defensively, and I thought he didn't play great after the first 2-3 games of the tournament. But he played well against the USA in that last game. He played pretty well, but against Serbia, he wasn't great. Against Spain, he was not very good. I think he got exposed a little bit on defense. He was a liability. And what Jordy started to do was just say, hey, we're just going to put a bunch of good defenders and take out Olynyk and bring him off the bench. And I thought that was probably a smart move. Going forward, as you mentioned, I do not think I was a bit more high on Edie, and then watching him for 2 weeks, I'm pretty, I don't want to say out, but I'm out of him being on the team in 2024. I
Oh,
think
really? Okay.
I don't see how it makes sense. He's just not good enough defensively
Yeah.
against the best
Yeah.
teams. And you could see it against the USA. Jordy puts them in for 2 minutes. They go on, I think the US outscored them 15-2 in 2 minutes, right? And just attacking them. And I'm not saying that he's a bad player, but I just don't think he, as you mentioned, he doesn't have the foot speed, but he doesn't have the mental acuity, like as a basketball player right now, to understand defensive sets, to understand rotations, to, read a pick and roll the right way. Like he's just a step slow. And when you're already a step slow, that's 2 steps slow. And then everyone's out of position and you let a lot of really good shots for the other team. So I thought Kyle Alexander, although Jordy went away from him, I thought he did pretty well for what he is. He does nothing offensively other than make threes at the end of meaningless games, which he did twice actually against, I believe, Latvia and France. I think he hit a 3 to end the game, which was really weird. But I thought he was pretty good. But in the system, there's not a lot of guys that you can look to. Brandon Clark, has talked about probably not playing for Canada. He's coming off an Achilles. You never know because the Olympics is a lure, but you never know. Trey Lyles played really well in 2021, other than missing a wide open shot to tie the game at the end against.
I keep mentioning him. I keep mentioning him.
Yeah,
I'm like,
Yeah.
Trey Lyles is there, and like it would be nice
but
to have.
he's good. I think it would help, but at the same time, he doesn't. They don't really need him. Not a great defender, can shoot a bit, but he's not really like a 5, right?
No,
Uh,
no.
so if you have a small roster, it's going to be tough, right? Like let's say you add a Wiggins and Jamal Murray, you have 3 spots left for like if you take the 7 NBAers, add Jamal, add Wiggins, you have 3 spots,
Yeah.
right? You probably want a backup point guard. You maybe want another wing.
Oh,
So
we're gonna get into that in just a
anyways, my
second.
point being is there's not a lot of depth at bigs.
Yeah.
So I know I'm missing out on guys in the NBA, but
Alex,
Mhm.
would you consider? I've mentioned this to Kenyon before. Would you consider Tristan Thompson?
I'm out. The Kardashians got him.
You don't no curse on your team.
No, I
Curse
just
on the team.
don't.
just
I don't
kidding.
see it. If he was still like playing in rotations consistently, it's not. I have nothing against Tristan Thompson, but I just don't think he's playing at the level, and he has not shown up to play for Canada since 2016. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
And he's not really an NBA player anymore either. Like he's very fringe. So
Well, he was serviceable in the Western Conference Finals with the Lakers. Just signed with
that's
Cleveland a few days ago.
that's like throwing up 5 fouls for Jokic. That's
Yeah.
what it felt like. So
Yeah.
I'm not against him, but again, he's not a rim protector. He does add a bit
Mhm.
more size than a Powell.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he has FIBA experience, but that would be interesting. I would be very surprised if he was in Paris, but you never say never. And he has played for Canada. But they just we're like the Americans at the same time for the most part. We don't have bigs that block the like our shot blockers to the level of kind of these other countries. And if you look at a Serbia, you look at Germany, they just have a lot of guys that are like 6'10" stretch 4s. And in FIBA, that's really good, like big, strong guys. I think the guy on Germany was like Teichmann. I think that was his name. And a couple other guys that were just real big, strong bigs. And Canada doesn't really have that as much. So we'll see what's next for that. But I'd imagine we'll have some big on top of Olynyk and Powell, but that's probably it.
Yeah.
see how Rowan Barrett decides between the core 14 that isn't really a core 14. Like I don't think Kem Birch is probably not an option anymore after all the
I
injuries.
don't think his knees will let him.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Good that he got paid, but yeah, I just it's good. That's going to be the dilemma for this team is size. But you add a Wiggins, who's a very good rebounder for a three. You can put him as a four. I thought Dwight Powell played really, really well. It was just who do you have after him? He is undersized, and they did get killed on the boards a bit, but for the most part, he was very good. I was actually very impressed by the way he played.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I actually have the stats up here. Oh, never mind. We actually got out rebounded by the Americans, but it was very close. I think it was three more rebounds. One thing that we haven't talked about because we kind of already just kind of breezed over, although we didn't talk about the scrub. But we we did talk about the non NBAers. There's one person that we missed out talking about, which would be Rowan's son. And so one of the things that I noticed in this tournament is that just from a similar to the NBA, in terms of his ability to drive, he still has that and does possess that ability. I do think he needs to get a little bit more craftier, but I mean, what, he's 22, I think, or
23,
23?
23.
Okay. It's hard to keep track of ages, but I'm not too far off. But yeah, and so overall, I do think he deserves, a little bit of a shout out overall. In the final game, I think he did really, really well, although there were times in the tournament that, if I'm being completely honest, I do think that he could have been better. Um, um, but I don't. I think I'd actually, if I compare his performance to Victoria, I would say it was around the same. Um, just
Yeah.
off of like just first off the hand, just thinking about it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he definitely had an up and down game and it's tournament. But I would say if he played well and that USA game, he still has his knocks. He still makes sometimes forces bad shots or goes in transition and doesn't have the best handle, got turned the ball over a little bit. And he did that in the USA game. But then he made big threes too, down the stretch of that game. And he had the one that iced it. He had a couple in the fourth that I believe they were down 102, 100 and made like a no yes shot. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I thought he played really well against the USA and they needed it. And I do believe at Paris again, presuming Murray and maybe Wiggins, he'll have an even less reduced role. I think that'll be better for him. Canada didn't have a lot of shooting, just even a little bit more shooting, just to give him a little bit more space to attack the rim will really help in my mind. I asked him a question at the beginning of the tournament because he played so well in the friendlies before the tournament, and I said, how are you so successful getting to the rim? And he said the paint's wide open. It didn't feel like that during the tournament.
No.
So overall, I thought it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was okay, and he ended on a high. Maybe he just needs to play the U.S. to probably have the best games of the tournament. Shout out to 2017 when he won the U19s. So overall, I think his game. He was in the draft class with Zion, with Ja. I mean, he's more reliable. He's going to show up to work more than those two guys.
Yes.
But overall, maybe the height and just the guys he's compared to maybe makes him look worse than he is.
Yeah.
Because he's still a really good serviceable player. If he can just get his shooting to be league average from three, he's really good. And he's never really played on teams that were great for him, right?
No, he hasn't.
The Knicks teams have no outside shooting. The paint's clogged.
No.
How does that help his game, right? He's
Doesn't.
almost a little bit Ben Simmonsy. I mean, he's not, of course, when he doesn't run away from adversity. But just overall, he needs a bit more of a spread out offense. And with Canada, as we talked about, they didn't have a lot of shooting, so the paint was much more clogged than if you had just imagine just adding Murray and he's coming off the bench, or I think he'd probably come off the bench, but we'll see. Just like that is just a way better shooter than having Lou Dort in the corner or on the offside, right? the paint's
Yeah,
going to collapse, right? So I think we'll see how he does, and he'll always show up for Canada because of his dad, as Shea
Yep.
said
of
before the
course.
tournament. Um, RJ has no choice to be here, so I think that's going to be the case for a while with RJ.
Yeah, Beyond's not
Yeah.
here, but he pointed out with Wiggins that his mom won't let him miss it because she's an Olympian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's
But
always funny how parents do that, Coach.
your point about RJ, like RJ shot 37% from three in this FIBA tournament. If you get that from him in the Olympics, I think you take it. Like
yeah.
that's a pretty good. That's certainly it's a good number, especially from his career averages, kind of in the NBA. I found it interesting during some of the games. I don't know if this was Jordy or this was RJ, but he would many times set up on the right hand side of the floor. Now, why is that significant that he's setting up on the right hand side of the floor? He's left handed. So he's able to put his right shoulder into someone else's right shoulder while he's driving, and then kind of be able to kind of turn his hip and then be able to angle his body to go in strong for layups and or dunks. And he was able to do that. I noticed a few times. So I was really just pleased to see that because he's strong, he's a good athlete, and like kind of like you guys had said before, he's going to be there for Team Canada. It's like when your dad's the basketball coach, like, no, son, you're coming to the game, you're coming to practice right now, that kind of
Mm.
thing. So, moving forward, and even beyond 2024 Olympics, I think we'll have RJ there, which will be good.
Yeah, and
He's sorry, I was going to say like he was the youngest player outside of Zach Edey on that team. Like it doesn't feel like it because RJ's been in our consciousness for so long, right? From U17 or U19 in 2017 till now. Like that's 6 years. But he's only 23, right? It feels like he's 27 in the way we've kind of known him, but he's younger and there's more room to grow. And I think to kind of touch on maybe my last point was just that his flaws are very glaring, right? The lack of shooting, maybe just kind of going up only left-handed, but he is still a very effective player and is a decent enough defender that brings a lot to the table. And as you said, he's going to be playing for Canada for a long, long time.
I saw RJ play when he was 14 years old, I believe, for Ontario when they played Nova Scotia in the finals. It was in Nova Scotia at the time. So seeing him at 14 years old playing U17, you just knew, like, yeah, he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with most of what you said. Actually, basically everything that you said. I also will say, yeah, I think in terms of his, whether it's FIBA or the NBA, the one thing, and this is where I would kind of diverge a little bit, is that I do think that the shot will come along, but the way to get there is the handle. So I kind of use a different way to get there. A lot of people focus on like get the shot first and the handle. I'm like get the handle to buy yourself the time for the shot. But yeah, I think yeah, I agree. So with that being said, looking forward towards Paris, we talked about your guaranteed quote unquote NBAers. I don't know if you're adding Sharp in versus Mathurin, but before we get to that, I would ask you one thing. You said that you were around during the practice time. I heard that I believe it was Leonard Miller was joined some of these practices. Of course, he got injured during them. I don't know if you have any insight on that, but I think he would be very interesting depending on how he does this season to see because if he has that shot creation that he showed in summer league and that translates into the league, I think he would be interesting just because of his maybe not his I mean he still has to hit the gym a little bit, but in terms of his length, he would be a very interesting four on this team potentially. I don't know about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I will. I don't see any of those guys that are kind of just entering the league
Hmm.
playing for Canada for two real reasons. The first one is for the end, and Sharp might be going against his financial maybe future, but people that don't know, and I had to sit down with Michael Bartlett, and he's talked about the insurance. Like basically, these players. So let's say you come into the league and you're Leonard Miller, you're a second round pick, I believe he was, and you're making $1 million, right? So Canada basketball if when they go to these tournaments, they insure the players, right? In conjunction with FIBA. but it's for the money you're making right now. It's not for your future earnings.
Yep.
So if we go maybe transition to a Shaden Sharp, 7th overall pick, I don't know how much he's making. I haven't looked at it, but let's say it's like $7-8 million as a top 10 pick. So FIBA will cover that, but they don't cover it if, let's say, he blows out his ACL and he's about to get a supermax, or not a supermax, but a max contract off his rookie deal that's like $150 million, like the one that Jamal Murray signed, the one that Andrew Wiggins signed.
Yeah, they don't cover you for opportunity
Or
cost
future
lost.
contracts, it's only for the
Yeah.
one that you're signed to. So these players have a huge amount of reason not to go. So that's one thing. And the second one that, to go to maybe a Leonard Miller, to a Shaden Sharp, is these guys have great potential, especially Sharp. I'm not out on him as an NBA player. I believe that he's going to be, I think has a chance to be an all-star. That's the capability that he has. If you watch him on Portland, he doesn't know what he's doing on defense. He doesn't really see the floor that well yet. He's just super raw. And if you look at these tournaments against FIBA, like in FIBA, all these teams run these amazing sets, just run you to death. You need to understand defensive schemes, and you're throwing a 20-year-old on, and they're just going to get cut up, right?
So to be fair, did you watch him in high school at all?
A little bit. No, he's
So no, that's not the point I was going to make. I was going to say he's always kind of been a little laxadaisical on the defensive
yeah,
end.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So he has the tools. He has
Decent
the
passer.
tools.
He's not even like a black hole, maybe like a
No,
Matherin, but
no.
like the one out of the young guys coming up that would make a lot of sense to me, and I don't know if he's going to do it, is Andrew Nemard. When he played in 2019, he played in 2018 actually here in Ottawa with RJ Barrett. I think they played the Virgin Islands. So he has FIBA experience. He's a point guard, which what this team really needed. I think Corey Joseph and Team Canada probably mutually agreed not to come to this tournament this year because of playing time. That's kind of, I don't want to report it, but I think that's probably
Well, I think he's also getting to the point.
That's what I heard too. Yeah.
Yeah. So that might be different in Paris, but I think Nembhard's a much better player than Corey Joseph right now. I was listening, I think, to Zach Lowe, and they said everyone in Indiana is really high on him. It just makes sense. Matherin, I like him. I think he'll be a good NBA player, but isn't a good passer, can be up and down defensively, especially off ball. And where are you playing? Like, if let's say everyone comes and you add a Jamal Murray, is he playing over RJ Barrett? Is he playing over Lou Dort? Is he playing over Jamal Murray and SGA? No. Nikhil, no. I just don't see a lot of space for these young guys. And if they were bigs, maybe I'd feel differently, right? Because Canada really needs a big. They don't need wings.
I'm also forgetting about O'Shea
way
Brissett.
too many wings, right? So, pardon me?
I said I'm also forgetting about O'Shea Brissett as well.
Yeah, who that's a different story. Whatever.
Yes.
But so I don't see a lot of young guys, and I'm not against them. Like if Shaden Sharp this year averages 22, 5, and 3 on a young team with Scoot Henderson, and he looks like the next thing, I'm not saying no to him necessarily. I just don't really see where it makes sense. And are you playing him as a 12th man, kind of like a Christian Laettner role on a
That's
team?
what I was kind of thinking initially.
But we'll see. But not against it if it's in that capacity necessarily. But it'll be interesting to see what Rowan Barrett does with this roster. It's going to be very, very fascinating.
Yeah,
Alex.
Sorry.
Do you feel that this 3-year commitment that they all made post Victoria, that for 2022, 2023, 24, so I heard Michael Bartlett talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I understand it is it's quite significant, and I can understand it. Like if you have these guys who don't play in the NBA who are going to these tournaments and competing for Team Canada, like if I'm one of those guys, I feel like I would have, kind of the right maybe to be on that Olympic team as well. If I'm going to all these tournaments. And my understanding was Jamal Murray and O'Shea Brissett have been part of, even though they have been competing so much, they've been at like these training camps per se. That's what I got from Michael Bartlett. Do you feel like Do you feel that's a significant thing, this whole 3 year commitment versus the guys who haven't been as committed, or what do you think about that?
I think that's the $1 million question in going into Paris is what
Mm,
do they do? I don't have like I've talked to Rowan Barrett. He doesn't really tell you much.
yeah,
Uh, Bartlett, I know a little bit. I listened to both of them kind of on radio here in Toronto. Um, I don't have a, depends how you parse through the words and how they speak. They talk about the 3 year commitment. I also think, would it be fair to those guys who just won the, like, let's say like Melvin Ejim or
yeah,
Grubb or Alexander or Zach Edey to say, hey, you won and we're going to now take you Wiggins to Paris, right? Also, you don't know who's going to be available, contracts. I only think Olynyk is a free agent this summer out of the 7 NBAers. I could be wrong, but the Olympics are like basically right in the middle of free agency is when like you start going to training camp and stuff, right? So for the most part, contracts should be okay for most of the guys. But to answer your question, that is the existential question going into Paris: is do you go off this plan? I, I think the Wiggins question is the biggest one.
yes, me too.
I don't. I think Murray's going to be there if he wants to be. Corey Joseph will probably be there if he wants to be. O'Shea Brissett, I'm not so sure about, but he is technically part of Core 14 or whatever. I know I'm missing someone that was on this team, but overall, it's the Andrew Wiggins because I don't have inside info, but I am pretty certain he will say, I want to go because everything you hear about him is he wants to go to the Olympics. That's why he was there in Victoria, was to go to the Olympics. So what do they do on that? In my mind, you have a core of guys that played together and you're adding in Wiggins, who has FIBA experience. He played in 21, he played in 15, way more than Jamal Murray. I will keep saying that. Jamal Murray's never played for the men's team other than a Pan Am Games. So it's going to be really, really interesting. I bet they're going to go with talent. I just don't see them. I think it's the 7 NBA guys, and then maybe Jamal Murray, maybe a Corey Joseph, and you fill out the rest. And also with the younger guys, is that they weren't good. They weren't here. Like Ben Mathurin wasn't here in 21 in the NBA as a clear, NBA player, or Andrew Nemhard as well. He was like Gonzaga, right? And Florida, I think, at one point too. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I'd guess is Murray's there if he wants to be there. The 7 NBA players, and then the question of do they let guys in who are not part of the core 14 starts at Andrew Wiggins. If they let Andrew Wiggins in, then you maybe see a Trey Lyles, maybe see an Andrew Nemhard or a Ben Mathurin or Shaden Sharp. If you don't see Wiggins, I don't think you see any of those guys. And maybe it's just the NBAers that agreed. So like maybe O'Shea and Corey and then Jamal and the rest.
I could see Nemhard being difficult from an insurance standpoint just because that's right before his contract year is about to begin. So that's one thing I was going to bring up before you guys talked about that is that Nemhard from that standpoint might be a little bit more challenging. Again, it's not necessarily going to be his free agency year, but he's going to be going into a contract year, and that's going to be interesting. Especially, since he is a second rounder, if I'm not mistaken. So it will be interesting. One second. I guess my thing is I hope they go with talent first and foremost. And then I think that the other thing is that it would be nice to see, depending on the years that because I think it really does depend on, if a Sharp or a Matherin really turn it up this year and really have a really, really good year, and they say that they want to play, you do have to give them some thoughts. I know what you're saying, where it's like, where do they fit in? But I'm also thinking beyond the Olympics because, from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, once you start raising up the ranks in FIBA, it's easier to get to kind of progress from there because of the seedings that you get in future tournaments. Um, and so you would assume that they would have some sort of form of future success. And so I'm both thinking like now and later. I guess my other thing is that if you've invested all this money to get to the Olympics, what was the point if you're not going to bring your best team?
Good point. I'm on board with that. I know I don't know if you guys know Scott Witter, but he's very much core 14. Don't don't break it up. I'm a bit different on that. I think as you said, it's the Olympics. Why aren't you bringing your best players? And it's not like you're upsetting the apple cart. Like 7 NBA players just went here and played their butts off, have continuity. Sure, it's going to be different to have Jamal Murray, to have Andrew Wiggins, but your talent elevates significantly with just those two players. So I think that's a good problem to have. And like, for example, you look at the United States, if they do the Avengers, LeBron, Last Dance, blah, blah, blah. LeBron's amazing, but come on. Just they will have never played with each other, at least for a long time. Like Steph Curry's never played with LeBron. LeBron played with KD in 2012, but that was over a decade ago. You have Dame Lillard, and think about it, in 2021, that USA team beat France and had lost to them earlier in that tournament, lost to Nigeria, lost to Australia in the pre-tournament games, beat them by 5 points. And Canada just beat that French team that was pretty similar by 30. So but you know why? Because that USA team had never played together. It was all just thrown together. And so it's going to be interesting to see the US. Sure, they might have the most talent, and maybe that's why they win. Just they're too good. The one that scares me the most is Steph Curry. That would not be fun. But Canada will have actually continuity, which we've been talking about. Canada doesn't have continuity. Everyone else does. In Paris, they will, and the USA probably won't. And so I really like their chances if they just add on the margin. What's on the margins, because it's like high impact players. But you just add a bit more talent that kind of fills out the roster and really plugs the holes that this team had. And I think if you add a Jamal Murray and an Andrew Wiggins and maybe an Andrew Nembhard, man, I think they're one of the. They should expect a medal, and I think they should be going for gold, which they did at this tournament as well.
Yeah, and I'll just so to cap off this, I'll just say before we go to the NBA side of things, which will be much shorter, specifically about Wiggins. To me, it's like he's played at like in 2021, so and like you said, I keep bringing it up too. I'm like, I mean, I haven't seen Jamal in a minute, and I understand why. I'm not. He has a good excuse why, but I haven't seen him in a minute. So to me, I feel like it's almost like a package deal in a sense, because it's like you can't say, oh well, one guy verbally said okay, but he never showed up, and yet the other guy who did show up, you're like, well, sorry man,
You
you're
want
not
a
part of
little
the club.
tidbit from training camp, because I can give you that right now. So
Sure.
Jamal Murray was speaking on the second day.
Yeah.
He was the last one up. And so he was shooting. So, like, when you get into the OVO Center, there's two courts, and there's
Hmm.
the arc that Dylan Brooks, which was really cool. You could see like the percentages and where everyone shot.
Hmm.
And so he's shooting, making these amazing deep threes, kind of, and we're kind of on the right corner, and he's on the far court, but the closest court. And he finishes kind of warm up, and then starts shooting in front of us. And then all of a sudden, you can tell he's kind of wrapping up his warm up, and he just runs out to the far side to the exit for the players. You see the media guy kind of almost run, but like run walk like in the Olympics, like all over.
I'm just imagining Pop running with the camera.
Thinking to ourselves in the media, we were like, is he coming? Is Jamal Murray going to be there? Like, is he not? I guess he's not going to the Olympics. Like, he doesn't want to talk to us. And we're thinking, oh, he's going to skip media. Comes back, he's changed. He's in like just a hoodie and like, I don't know, like sweats. And he's like, yeah. And I think after we saw that, and he was good to the media. Like, he was fine. He was professional. But I would say after that, I felt pretty, I felt I don't feel like he's going to go to Indonesia and go to Europe and play with this team. I felt that it seemed a bit unlikely the way he just, he talked about how tired he was and everything. So that's a little tidbit I thought you guys might like from training camp. Yeah, I think Jamal Murray could have been there. And I think he was in Australia at one point recently, like basically at the same place in the world for a New Balance. Uh, I don't know how committed he is, but I'd imagine he will be at the Olympics if he wants to be. I think there is a difference between him and Wiggins just because he technically committed, even though he did go to the training camp, right? And he did the past couple of years, but
If I'm not mistaken, the USA team tried to do a commitment, and I think Steve Kerr mentioned how it didn't really work for them long term. Now I'm paraphrasing here. I don't have the actual clips to like pull up, but yeah.
In '08, after they lost to the Argentinians in '04, they championships in '06 to I think Greece, and it was like LeBron, Melo, Wade. Then they had a commitment for the '07 World Championships or '07 and '08. So like the team in '07 that they had I think the FIBA Americas at the time. And '08 was essentially the same roster, and they asked for a 2-year commitment.
Mm.
I think that's what you're referencing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. So just transitioning into the Raptors, it is Basketball Rewind, but today I'm just going to be talking about the Raptors people. So for this part of the conversation, if you're not interested in the Raptors, I guess come back later. But that's okay.
Giannis is leaving Milwaukee. It's done. Brian Windhorst told me that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll just say this about Milwaukee. When Drew speaks about certain things, I think you have to take him at his word. But especially with what he's been through with his off-court stuff. So for those who don't know, his wife had cancer, survived it. He said at that time, around that time, I'm going to take time off. He did. When he says he's done with something, I think he's done. Some of these things are bigger than basketball, and I think some of these things for people, not everyone understands that, and that's okay. But some of these things are bigger than money, especially when you have the money. And for him, I think it's bigger. So Drew, I know is not like I don't know for certain. I'm not clairvoyant, but I would be surprised if he is still an NBA player when his contract is up in 2 years. And so that makes it really tough to continue success, even this season with the comments of your star player. Masai, please don't get too thirsty here. What I will say.
Remember the Masai like open gym from like 20,
Yes.
I think before Giannis signed his supermax with Milwaukee, and it's like it's literally I don't know. I think they said his name. I
They did.
believe
I'm
they
pretty
did.
sure they did. I have to go back and look at it, but I know exactly the clip that year. It was almost like a Stauskas type moment, but they didn't get him.
Traded a first, not with Masai for Kyle Lowry, and
Yep.
then they get it back. I
It
think
was Gary Forbes in a first, if I'm not mistaken, and someone else for Kyle Lowry.
yeah, but yeah, that was that was some high level tampering. That was like Clippers level. So
Yes.
it didn't work, but maybe it'll happen again. We'll see.
It could. It could. We probably don't have the what it takes to trade for him outright without gutting our team, but it's a whole other thing. But in terms of the Raptors as currently constructed, what are you looking forward to this season? And also, I guess as a follow up to that, where do you think they'll end up in terms of? Do you think that they will have a better record than last year or a worse record?
Yeah, I'm here for the vibes because the encore really feel like it's going to be better than last year.
Mm.
Obviously, they'll have a full year of Jakob Poeltl, which will really help. They won't have Fred VanVleet, and as good as Dennis Schroeder was at the FIBA World Cup, he still only shot 33% from three, and Fred on his like off year was like 35 on high ball, and he's a pretty good defender, although his on ball defense really fell off a cliff last year for the Raptors. I think he was probably playing way too many minutes, which we've said for 3-4 years with Nick Nurse, and hopefully that'll be a bit different this year with Darko just not running his starters into the ground. But to be fair to Nick Nurse, he did not have a lot of depth. And that's still the problem with this team is they don't have a lot of shooting. They don't have a lot of depth. I like Grady Dick as a pick. Yeah, I don't know if I would have. That Keontae George looks pretty good for Utah. But overall, they should be a decent team. They're not going to be bad. I think the Vegas has them at 36 wins over under, give or take. That sounds pretty right to me, honestly. The East is really, I don't know if it's really good, but there's not a lot of bad teams. Every team that was really bad tanked for Wemby, and now they're going forward. Like even a Detroit should be better with Cade. Orlando, I think, could take a big step forward. Just a lot of teams that have kind of moved on from tanking and should be competitive. And I don't really know if the Raptors got any better.
Mm.
Now, if Scotty Barnes, if he takes a leap, if OG, which we've said this for 5 years, takes a leap, Gary Trent maybe plays a little bit better overall. Dennis Schroeder is, FIBA Dennis Schroeder. I can see this team getting to 40, 45 wins. I really believe in Pascal Siakam. I think he's a really, really good NBA player. I think he's an all NBA type of player, like more like third team, but still really, really good. So overall, I think playing sounds right to me. I'd be surprised if they were in the playoffs without a play-in spot. Even a 7-8 seems more likely not than likely. So I'm trying to be glass half full here, but I did not understand their offseason. They should have traded Fred. Yeah, I don't know. People can listen to my podcast with Brian Windhorst. I don't really know what they've been doing. They don't make any transactions. They've been the lowest in transactions the past 3 years. And for me, at a certain point, patience when there's absolutely no action becomes ineffective action. And so that's really what I've seen with this front office. They still don't have shooting. They still don't really have depth. But you know what? They have Scotty Barnes and Grady Dick. So I'm all for the vibes. Maybe those guys become best friends. That'd be pretty fun. Gary Trent has supreme swag. So Siakam spicy. So there is some storylines, and they won't be bad. But I still think it's going to be maybe not the most fun team to watch. And every time they take a three, close your eyes because it's probably a brick, and the other team will get the ball as soon as you open them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I won't push back too much on this because I already gave you a lot of pushback for the stuff. And by the way, when I give you pushback, it's more just to prompt the discussion. Yeah, I think it'll be definitely an interesting season. I think one of the X factors that seems to have been forgotten in all of this is actually Darko, because I'm really curious to see what the offense even looks like. I think what could very well happen is that you could still have similar results, but the process looks better, which could, even that is a huge improvement, because having basketball that is more aesthetically pleasing is, I'm guessing, just from what I've heard and also just playing a little bit a long time ago, it's more fun to play. Like when the ball moves around, it's more fun. And I think also, I think you can be a really good defensive team without running people into the ground, and by playing slightly more conservative. So that's what I would say without going through the entire roster. I do think that I'm really high on Christian Koloko myself. First video I made on here. I also was going to just comment on your Pascal Siakam being All NBA, or whatever. I actually, one of the most viewed videos on this channel, I did a big huge, like, I went through Pascal from the bubble till like basically last year, and I said I hate ranking, but he said he wanted to be an top 5 player and that he was willing to do the work for it. And so I think that, number one, people took that out of context and ran with it, and I was like, you got to be careful with the words, because like he did say he was willing to work for it, and that's what he wants for himself. And I'm never going to say that any player who wants something for themselves, as long as they're willing to work for it, go for it. I mean, who am I to limit anyone's dreams and desires? But I ended up saying that I would put him 17th overall, and I said he's going to be perennially, like, basically borderline All NBA. So yeah.
I actually think they're going to be very, not, I might say very good. They won 41 games last year, basically playing 7 players with a team that was, I think, 28th or 26th in 3-point shooting. I suspect that number is going to go up with the additions. They were 15-10 with Pirtle. Pirtle's not the best fit. You probably couldn't admit with Siakam and Scotty. They all kind of take up the paint. That's where they like to operate a little bit. But I can see this team winning anywhere from 43 wins to 48 wins. That's high end 48. And we had 7 games, I think, last year with Otto. They should load manage him for the whole year. If he gives you 40 to 50 games, it is a bonus. Take it. He was huge for Golden State in that finals. He's always he'll get you 40% from three. He'll play good defense. The Jalen McDaniel signing I thought was huge because they got him for very cheap, like 2 years, $9 million or stuff like that. A 6'9" guy who can play both ends of the floor, and he shot 40% from three in Philly. Small sample size, I get it. And he's going to get those looks with Harden and Embiid, of course. I suspect he's going to still get some of those looks with Siakam. Siakam draws a lot of double teams. And with the new coaching staff, you're not playing Siakam 37 minutes a night. I feel there's a bit more versatility. If anything, Masai kind of doubled down on the 6'9" vision with Jalen McDaniels probably playing Scotty at point. So you're probably going to see a bit more of Koloko this year. No, Kenyon and I we've spoken a lot about that, but I'm actually more excited about the team this year than I have been in 4 years. So I think depth is so key. I love the Grady selection. Best shooter in college basketball outside of Bryce Sensabaugh. His mechanics, he should set up very well with Siakam and Scotty. In theory, he should. Gary Trent played well off Siakam when they both played together as well. So I think a high end for me is going to be 48 wins. I suspect they're going to be somewhere around that 43 to 45 wins this year. And like you said, that might be a high play-in. I doubt you sneak into the 6th seed, but it could be. It's possible. It's debatable. But to me, the East never got so much better, though. Kind of plateaued, stayed the same. So I'm not really scared of many teams in the East. The Milwaukee's, the Phillies, the Boston. Philly might be a different animal, but we'll see. I think the Raptors actually are going to be a bit better than they were last year. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I think what's interesting, you guys both talked about Darko. Like I was around Jordi Fernandez. I had saw him every day, saw how he motivated the players, called players out in media conferences, had a sit down interview with him. I keep thinking about how he would have done with this team. But at the same time, Darko hasn't coached a professional game yet as a head coach, and we'll find out. But I think this management group is betting on is that we can go back to the Dwayne Casey era, because I don't really feel as though Nick Nurse really developed a lot of guys. But Darko comes in with this development type of philosophy, and kind of that's what he's kind of known for. And like, look at Precious Achiuwa. He was amazing in 2022 down the stretch. Not so good last year, but he showed stretches of being able to shoot, attack the rim, really good defender. Those things kind of dropped off a little bit. He had moments, right? You look at Scotty Barnes, who is still pretty good in his second year, but definitely could be better. He has the tools to be a close to 20-10-6 guy, right? Could he do that, or close to something like that? OG Anunoby, maybe he plays a little bit better. His handle is always questionable, but let's say he gets like 15% better. I think he had a bit of a finger issue, and he didn't shoot the ball very well throughout the year. I think he probably will be closer to his normal self, which is in the high 30s, low 40s from three. So there's definitely things, and Grady Dick is a nice young player. You can throw in and will definitely help the offense, just spacing and everything with Siakam, as Coach mentioned. So they have Dennis Schroeder, could maybe be just, I don't know, but he definitely is different, and he has someone that can get to the rim, beat guys off the dribble that no one's really done for this team in a decade other than Kyle Lowry using his ass to do it. So it's just going to be a different team. And if there's a lot of internal development, I think what coach said, yeah, I think they could be close to 40. It feels like a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
And so, sure, this team 3-4 years ago, under Dwayne Casey, under Nick Nurse, like in 2020, you felt everything had to go right, and then everything kind of did, and everyone got better, and this whole team came together, and they'd get 50 wins. So I'm not against saying it. I just don't see it, and the way they play the game. I think in the NBA, you need to be a good offensive team, and it's so hard for this team to be good offensively, especially in the half court. Maybe it's going to be easier in during the regular season just because there's less half court sets in a playoff setting. But um, I just I think they need to be good offensively, and I don't know how that happens with this team to be kind of decent even. But only time will tell, and I love watching Scotty Barnes, and if he takes a big leap, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm definitely not at the 48 that you and beyond are at. As a high end, I'm closer to between, I would say, and I haven't really settled on an exact number, and I will soon because stay tuned because Basketball Rewind will have the standings probably within a week, both separate episodes of East and West. But yeah, I think. I would settle in like just off the top of my head, probably 43 to 45 is where I would feel comfortable with 45 being like really if things go well. I do think that I have to like sit down and do the math on the other teams, but I think that does get you to a 6-7 seed. Which is right around where I think that they kind of settle into, and I think that's I'm ignoring all else in the East or whatever. I'm just saying like that's where I think that they would be. So yeah, I think that they can do it. I don't think that that's asking for too much, mainly because I think that you have, ironically, the better depth at forward spots in case Otto doesn't you know give you more than 8 games again. I think you have at least someone that you can put out that's better than, no offense, but Bo Cruz, or some of the other guys that we put out, like Joe Wieskamp. No shade against Joe Wieskamp. I'm just saying, like right now, there's like a major drop off between Joe Wieskamp, and like who he was, say an OG Anunoby. Whereas while there's a drop off, I don't think that Jalen McDaniels versus OG Anunoby is the same level of drop off. I don't know. Maybe you think that Joe Wieskamp and Jalen McDaniels are the same level. Personally, I think if you're at least able to crack a rotation in the playoffs for Philly, playing all the way through to where he played, regardless of what he did, and I think that we'll see how good he is or not. I think that speaks to like he's a rotation player, and I think that having more rotation players has been underrated. And I think the other thing too is that the sneaky thing about the two pickups that we got is we got guys that, from a situational awareness standpoint and like a role standpoint, I guess if you're also including Grady in that, they all kind of fit a well-defined role automatically. In terms of the development, you made a comment, and I just want to comment on it. I think part of the reason why Nurse wasn't a good developer beyond his personality or whatever, or his decisions, was because we lost a lot of our development squad literally the year that he became the coach. Like that
Yeah.
very next year we won the championship, and like it was like a mass exodus of people just going. And I think that's where I see like the director of scouting, shout out to the triple double king, uh, Mr. I think it's Ben, is it Ben or Bendrick Uzo? But
Ben.
I Ben. So
Ben.
yeah, I don't know if you remember him getting the triple double, and costing us a potential coin toss. But he's an NBA player, and I would assume that he knows how to view NBA talent. I think I'm not trying to shade anyone in the Raptors organization for their time, but for the longest time, the director of our development was, I believe, someone with basically an NBA background.
Mhm.
And again, for my viewers, just to make sure that people hear me, I said MBA. And that and a volleyball background, and it's just like there's levels to this. So all respect, but I would much rather trust someone who has that interpersonal experience with basketball at some level. Unfortunately, we didn't have that in recent years. It does seem like there are putting more emphasis on investing in that moving forward. So yeah. By the way, shout out to Tim Lywicki, who really put all that like entire development. Like I know Masai
Uh,
should
It's
get his
it's
credit, but
it's funny. I think I can say this. Yeah, I was at the
mhm.
when I was at the World Cup. I was with Arash and Mike Bartlett, and we were just talking about how everything changed under Tim Lywicki in terms of Masai. And for people that don't know, Mike Bartlett was at MLSC for a long time,
Mhm.
the CEO of Canada Basketball. So he definitely knows the Raptors pretty well. And that's basically why the Canada Basketball practices at the OVO Center is they have a very good relationship. And yeah, it would have been interesting to see Nick Nurse in that gym after being fired.
Yes.
But I actually, to give you a little nugget, I don't think that was because of Daryl Morey that he had to step down.
Oh, I don't think so either.
Yeah, no.
It was from what I've heard, it's from ownership. So don't hate on Daryl Morey unless you're James Harden. So yeah, but that's my little nugget for you guys. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I stand. I also think, yeah, I think I would say the most interesting thing will be from a non-Raptor standpoint, seeing how Nick Nurse handles their media, because their media is a little different.
It is in
So
Philly. Oh, yeah. Not just the 76ers, the
not just
Eagles,
76ers,
the
yeah, heck,
Flyers,
their fans even.
Phillies. It's well, we remember the game five. Yeah, I think it was game five in
Mm.
2022 playoffs when the Raptors, I think, won by 15 or 18 points.
Yeah, I
And the
love
and
that
the
game.
and the last 3 or 4 minutes, the crowd booed them off the floor.
Yeah.
Philly's always been like that though. They'll like run their
Yeah.
players out of time real quick. So yeah. Anyways, so with that being said, is there anything that you want to plug? What are you planning on covering since FIBA is done?
Yeah.
What are you transitioning to, and what do you want to kind of plug for
There's a
yourself?
lot. There's a lot of things, but I guess the first one is yeah, behind the play. I'll be trying to do some basketball stuff, a lot of hockey, probably more. Um, but I am also going to be doing some stuff for Raptors Republic throughout the Raptor season. So writing a little bit. I don't think it'll be like a huge amount, but like some kind of post games, maybe go on with Samson here and there. So I'll be around Raptors Republic throughout the season. Obviously, big fan of the team. So I'll definitely be tweeting about them. Hoping to have some more basketball coverage as the season progresses. But I'm hoping for Ramona Shelburne. That's in the works, but we'll
You
see.
got to get Zach Lowe soon. Bill
I,
Simmons.
I have not reached out to Blake Murphy to help me out with that, but yeah, maybe Om Young Masuk, like maybe Grange again. So we'll see. Like I'll have stuff in the works. I just don't have anything concrete for
Yeah.
basketball right now. But yeah, you can find my stuff at Raptors Republic for basketball stuff, and then check out my podcast Behind the Play. Had Brian Windhorst. I've had people like Howard Beck, Blake Murphy, Eric Corrine. I know I'm missing people in the NBA world, but Oren Weisfeld, Vivek Jacob. So a lot of cool people. S. Barahini, shout out to him, a really good friend of mine. Or I don't know if
He's we're actually scheduling. We're like
yeah,
literally.
he's great. Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
S is really, really good people.
Also, Blake has promised. He even messaged me.
Blake is awesome
he's like I
too.
promised you, and I'm like yeah. I'm like
Yeah,
totally
no,
looking about it.
Blake's good. He
He
just
is.
does 45 different things all at once. So out
I
of
called him. I said they're treating you like Stephen A. Smith over there, trying to like
yeah,
carry the ship. Like do this, do this, do this.
honestly, I know he's great. He's awesome. I think that might have been my one of my most nerve-wracking podcasts was having Blake Murphy because I'm like,
Yeah.
if I am gonna sound so dumb around him,
Yeah.
because he's such a smart guy and really nice.
It's been great having you on, people. I am going to link if there's any specific episode or whatever that you want
Just the
linked. It will
Brian
be
Windhorst one, sure, do
okay.
that.
Okay,
I know we're
perfect.
talking about it out loud, but yeah, that's kind of
Perfect.
cool.
Actually,
Right.
there's an episode on this channel, people, that will probably, I don't know which will if this will come out first or that is with Trey. We actually do
Oh,
reference that same episode.
oh,
Actually,
cool.
funny enough,
Thank you.
so I might even put that one first, just so it makes a little bit more sense. But either way, people, check it out. It will be in the description down below, as well as, of course, because you're on Basketball Rewind, please give me a like, a comment, or a subscribe, or all three. Be well appreciated. I hope everyone is well. With that being said, Coach, do you have any parting shots before you head out as well?
Oh, it's just good to have Alex on the show. I was following him on Twitter as the games with the FIBA tournament was going on, and certainly look forward to following his tweets and his podcast as well throughout the season, not just for basketball. I too, I'm a hockey fan, and
Okay.
unfortunately, my Montreal Canadiens, I don't know they're going to be that good this year because they're rebuilding.
Okay.
But and then I'm not sure if you're doing any baseball or stuff like that.
Yeah, I
Um,
have a baseball. I'll shamelessly plug. I have Scott Mitchell of TSN
nice.
coming on tomorrow. So if there's any baseball fans after the Jays up and down season, feel free to check that out. Good people. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was good having you on the show today and stuff like that. Ken continues to build this channel and stuff like that.
Slowly but surely. I think one of the next things for myself to plug is, again, people. It might be up by now. By the time this is uploaded, but there is a Malachi Flynn. I'm not tripping about this. There is a Malachi Flynn interview that I do have. It's only 4 minutes, people, but definitely check it out.
Cool.
If this is already loaded, go check that out. And if not, one of the things that I wanted to do is do a little bit more of a historical deep dive on a couple storylines about the Raptors, ownership, how they decided this stuff. Beyond gave me that idea. So yeah, with that being said, people, have fun, be safe, and enjoy the upcoming season and enjoy the future of Canada basketball as well. So yeah, take care and peace.